welcome our first speakers of the day to go over the CDTRP year in review. There will be a 15-minute Q&A session after the presentation. This session is kindly sponsored by Astellas Pharma, Inc. and Paladin Labs, Inc., as well as Takehome Canada. So I'd like to invite Drs. Laurie West and Dr. Patricia Gongal for the CDTRP year in review. Dr. Laurie West is the newly inaugurated Officer of the Order of Canada. We are really thrilled that she is our leader and leading this wonderful network of investigators. Really honored to introduce her. She's a professor of pediatric surgery, medical microbiology, immunology, and laboratory medicine pathology at the University of Alberta and the founding director of the CDTRP. Dr. Patricia Gongal is the CDTRP executive director. She has a background in molecular biology and genetics and many years of experience in scientific writing and developing strategy for large-scale research funding initiatives. So it's my pleasure to welcome them to the stage.
So we're doing, so you have to start.
Yes. So before we start the year in review, first we'll say it's so wonderful to see everybody here and equally wonderful to have everybody joining us online. So I first wanted to give a little bit of additional context around our COVID policies because these are different than what's happening at most conferences at the moment. So there's a few CDTRP core values that informed our policy. And first is equity and accessibility. So we don't want to exclude folks from attending this meeting who really don't want to get sick or who have health issues who mean that they're at increased risk of getting sick with COVID or anything else that is circulating. Second is that listening to patient, family, and donor voices really matters to us at CDTRP. It's not just a nice to have, but it's core to the way we do research and also how we operate as a network. And what we've heard from transplant recipients and transplant families is the lack of community solidarity and actions to protect immunocompromised people's health, especially kids with transplants right now, is harmful. And as leaders in this field, as a community, we have a responsibility to counteract that harm and do what we can. Third, what we've learned about mental health in transplant recipients and trauma from researchers in CDTRP's Theme 5 and others has informed our policies. So one of the key elements of trauma-informed care is that you actively work not to re-traumatize people. And so perhaps we've made an effort to make our COVID policies trauma-informed at this meeting. We developed our policies with the input of 2 transplant recipients and someone who has experienced their child being hospitalized with a respiratory virus, and that would be me. So we are very proud to have the overwhelming response from our patient community at this meeting. We have 25 patient, family, and donor partners here in person, many more online. So we're thinking of you too. We are glad that you are all here with us and really look forward to the comments and contributions that you're going to make over the next 3 days. So to everybody, thank you very much for working together and following our policies and everybody to do your part to create the collaborative, safe, and welcoming environment that CDTRP is known for. And with that, let's jump into the year in review. So I will pass it to you to get started, Laurie.
Great. Thank you. We're leaving our masks on.
There you go. As a
I can speak better. So thank you very much, Patricia, for going through those really important notes. So here we are in 2022. This is our 9th annual meeting as we enter our 10th anniversary year. And just to remind everyone, we were launched in April of 2013 as the Canadian National Transplant Research Program. We changed our name to be more inclusive of the donation communities a few years back to CDTRP. We were mandated by the Canadian Institutes of Health Research to link 3 important communities that had not had a chance historically to work together before, and that is solid organ transplant, bone marrow transplant or hematopoietic cell transplant, and the donation communities from the very beginning. And that was a novel and challenging mandate from CIHR to bring these diverse communities together. Early on in our work, we also recognized that the voices of patients and donors and families was equally important to the vision of improving donation and transplantation around the country. And so we've actively engaged those individuals, and happily they have informed our work in amazing and constructive ways from the very beginning. So here we are in 2022. We have, and this is a bit of what's happened in the last year, building on the previous years. So we have 30 new investigators in the last year, so a total of 206 primary investigators. We have 38 new trainees, so a total of 74 trainees. We have 11 new patient, family, and donor partners, which brings us to 65. I can't read those numbers there. And we have 40 new projects supported. I mean, that's just amazing. So we now have 125 active projects on the go. I mean, that's just amazing. So also to remind you that we are a coalition across the country at 35 universities and research institutes. And we have more than 100 partnering organizations. So it really has grown into not only a large, but a very diffuse but well-connected organization. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, so kind of moving through the year chronologically, back in March, hosted by Marie-Josée Hébert and Dima Kabani at the University of Alberta, building on the Prevent COVID project from last year, we held a forum on emerging COVID-19 issues in transplantation in March. And you'll hear more about this on Friday because there's exciting new news about this issue, but it was a chance really to continue to build on what was recognized by not only the government, but of course, everyone in the country, of course, everyone in the world, that and as Patricia so clearly stated, the particular issues of this pandemic for our transplant recipients and vulnerable people really continues to need attention. And so this has moved forward with some exciting new plans for the next year. Oops. See, here we go. We also this year relaunched this season of seminars, of research webinars called Level Up this year. There were 11 webinars with 15 speakers. This was, and we thank our supporters for this, which has been Astellas as well as AstraZeneca. These were done this year with trainee and our PFD moderators, and it's available on the CDTRP website as well as on YouTube channels. These are this is an example of the speakers this year, and as you can see, they're all from all over the place, well-known people as well as up-and-coming researchers who covered an amazing array of really fascinating topics. And those are there for you to participate in, to review as you like. But it was very exciting to launch some of these particular areas that are new, and then they capture the growth of the field in all kinds of different ways. And that will lead then to new research projects, of course. We also, back in April and May, held a media workshop series on organ donation and transplantation and health literacy. This came out really of a conversation that we had with Beatriz Dominguez-Gil, our very wonderful collaborator in Madrid, about how we interact with media. And although it started with a conversation about specifically about donation and how do you educate the public and interact specifically with the media, it really launched into more of a conversation about mutual benefits of being proactive in saying we're here, we're health professionals, we want to interact with you, and we've developed more mature and deeper relationships so that it's not a last minute thing when there's a health issue that arises that needs a quick response. And often what we were feeling was that sometimes media would respond in a certain way to kind of get a headline, but we weren't meeting their needs and they weren't meeting our needs. And so that was the basis of this. And it turned into a wonderful conversation. You can see the participants here. Tim Caulfield, who many of you may know, who's an amazing guru of getting rid of or addressing disinformation and misinformation, joined us, as well as a number of others who you can see on the screen here. There will be a second installation of this later this week, so please keep an eye on that and join us. You're very welcome to join all of the sessions. Moving into June of this year, we had our Patient, Family, and Donor Research Forum. This was sponsored by Astellas. This was really incredibly well attended with 157 attendees. This was put on in cooperation with the Organ Donation and Transplantation Collaborative, which, as many of you know, has been a several-year process working with Health Canada. Together with the Canadian Society of Transplantation. And it was supported by 17 partner organizations. And this was really a chance for our PFD partners to take the reins and speak. And many of you were there, really addressing what the issues that are most important, which allows us then to also all of us to sort of form our research priorities and guide our research priorities as we go forward, which is always a hugely important voice to us. These are, and we thank again our partners who all participated in this forum. I'm going to hand over to Patricia now to talk about the patient portal.
So another one of our developing initiatives is the CDTRP patient portal. So we completed phase 1 last year with over 200 resources for patients and families from across Canada. We're really excited to be moving into phase 2, which is going to expand the portal for more information related to chronic disease and pre-transplant, as well as research opportunities and resources for patients, families, and donors to participate in research projects. So we're very grateful to have the support of Astellas, AstraZeneca, and Paladin to move into phase 2. And we're also really excited to be partnering with the Transplant Ambassador Program to better communicate the availability of the portal to patients across the country. Continuing with the theme of partnerships, so one major project that is completed this year that again we're going to be talking about on Friday is this project funded by Health Canada and overseen by the collaborative to understand the donation and transplantation research ecosystem and develop a vision for the future. So stay tuned for more on that on Friday. Another initiative that began in previous years that's really coming to fruition now is the International Donation and Transplantation Legislative and Policy Forum. So this is hosted by Transplant Quebec, and we were very pleased to be co-hosting that as CDTRP. This year, we've kicked off the knowledge translation strategy. And one of the initiatives is producing lay summaries, fact sheets on topical issues coming out of the forum that could be used by policymakers. And we were absolutely thrilled that one of these has already been used to create new legislation in the jurisdiction of Alberta. This is MLA RJ Sigurdsson, who sponsored Bill 205, introducing mandatory referral into Alberta. We are really pleased to have a panel discussing this mobilization of research directly into legislation later this morning. That's just this morning, right after this, isn't it? Wonderful. So you don't have to wait long to hear more about that. More partnerships. So an initiative brought to Canada in partnership with the ISODP division of the Transplantation Society was Journal Watch. I won't give too many details about this project because, again, there'll be a presentation by the trainees involved during this meeting. But we're really pleased to support with the management team, coordination support to pull together newly published papers, specifically in donation, and share those with the donation community in Canada and around the world. I'll pass it back to you, Laurie.
So another partnership that we have valued a lot is our increasing work with the Transplantation Society. So our very own Stephanie was a social media ambassador at the recent meeting. Stephanie's back there. The recent meeting in Buenos Aires, and she handled all the interviews and so on. And so that is blossoming into a wonderful and more intense relationship. We're happy to announce, I think this is relatively new announcement, that the International Transplant Science Meeting, which is a cooperative meeting of TTS and ESOT and a couple of other organizations, will be meeting in Niagara on the Lake in the spring, in May. And so we're very happy to have that here in Canada, and encourage all of you who are interested in attending this is a basic science workshop that is organized as a joint project. So that will be really exciting coming up in April and May. Another important partnership has just happened last week or the week before in Toronto, which has been, again, we have a longstanding relationship with the Critical Care Forum and the important work that's being done in donation through that forum, which attracts international attention for the amazing things that come out of that. And that was held just a couple of weeks ago, as I said, in Toronto. And that continues to be an important partnership for us. It's important to remember that the community, when we moved from the CNTRP to the CDTRP, our mandate was changed a little bit to actually funding research, to supporting research. And it takes all kinds of interesting and creative thinking to think how we can best support our researchers. One of those is to support the researchers in our community to leverage research funding from CIHR, from the foundations, and so on. And so to that end, we support applications from investigators to CIHR, for example, by writing letters of support and by contributing cash and in-kind contributions that will make their research and their research applications more competitive. Of this last year, we wrote 55 such letters supporting various research applications. Probably many of you asked for those, but if you didn't, think to next year, because this is really helpful and it really increases the competitiveness of the applications. And of course, competition for research funding has never been more difficult or competitive. So 6 of these so far were successful. 33 we're still awaiting results of those applications. But at the moment, we can say that more than $300,000 of in-kind and cash support was committed. And that has linked so far to $47 million in successful funding. So bravo, we have 2 major, I know, this is just incredible. One of these was our support in working with the what became the Heart Failure Alliance, which was led by our wonderful colleague, Jean Rouleau. And that was successful and has now been launched. And there's, we think, exciting new news to come in the next little while, which is under embargo. So you didn't hear it from me, but it's related to CIHR. So very exciting. Anyway, so for those of you that have not requested letters of support for your applications, please do it. You have to do it early. It's a process. It's very sincere out there that will support your research and likely make your application more competitive. We'd also like to, this is our Research Innovation Grant Program, which in the last year supported 8 new awards for $240,000. And we'd like to thank these organizations that contributed to this research grant program, as you can see here. And The winners were, sorry. Here we go. And these are the winners from the 2022 program that has just passed. And we're very excited that this will be new work going on across the country, and some very exciting early career investigators as well as established investigators. So bravo to them. And I think the new competition is opening soon. So on January 18th, the 2023 competition will be open. The application deadline is in April and the notification date in June. And I would just like to say here that this program and the peer review that goes along with this program is really an incredible effort and you know, a strict and professional peer review program. And so we're really have attracted funds from across the country and from a number of organizations to support this research. And the whole program has been a huge success over the years. I'm going to hand back to Patricia now to take us through management.
So an update on the people that make up the CDTRP, not only our wonderful network, of course, but here are the boots on the ground. So updates to the management team this year. So of course, at the end of last year, we very sadly lost Mel Dudier as our executive director. And I have made a poor attempt to fill her shoes starting in January of this year. Katie Bain stepped into a new role as Director of Partnerships. And with her shift, we needed 2 people to fill that role. And so Dimitra Yotis has moved into a research manager position, and we are welcoming Erica Keita-Croft into the research theme coordinator position. We also said goodbye to Christian Stevens, who is a knowledge translation coordinator this year. The junior management team has also had a dapper year. Our newest recruit, Camila, was born February 10th. And all of the other members of the junior management team have hit all of their KPIs that we set up for them for the year. Joseph is applying to university. Lily started kindergarten, and Jules has almost mastered toilet training, but there is still time. It's not the end of 2022 quite yet, sweetheart. We have some familiar faces and some fresh faces in the theme leadership roles. As you can see here, this is just such a stellar team and a joy to work with all of these researchers and patient partners and clinician scientists to lead the CDTRP. Our platform leadership, Matt Weiss couldn't stay away, and so we welcomed him back into a platform leadership role in the education platform, along with Leanne Tibbles, Francis and Key as alumni and trainee positions on that platform. And with Marie Chantal moving over to Theme 1, that leaves a vacancy in our PFD partnership platform leadership, which we are currently recruiting for. Back to you, Lori.
So this is our senior leadership. As you know, we have these 3 communities that we bring together. Jean-Sébastien Delisle is the leader of the hematopoietic cell transplant arm. Sunny Denani, who I expect is watching the Morocco match in Qatar at the moment. He's actually there. Was very sorry he couldn't join us, but he leads our donation arm, and then the solid organ transplant arm I'm currently leading. Now, one face that we're missing on here that you will note immediately is our dear colleague Marie-Josée Hébert, who's listening, and I will hand over to her in a minute. So the 3 of us continue, but Marie-Josée is not on here because she has taken on a new and very important role for Canada. She is the new chair of CIHR Governing Council, and it's a huge honor for us to congratulate her on being named to this role. I just want to say a couple of words before I turn over to Marie-Josée to also speak. Marie-Josée, as the founding co-director of the CNTRP, We joined together with a remarkable, I don't know, I guess a partnership of minds that was remarkably collaborative and mutual. And that was that we tried, our goal from the very beginning was to create a collaborative sandbox, if you will, not a pyramidal kind of research network, but a place that offered a framework and built a framework for people to come in, and whether they were funded by CNTRP and then CDTRP or not, would find a place that would offer supports to help move their research forward, that would welcome ideas across the country, across all streams of research, whether it's basic science or clinical science or social science or policy and so on, and would kind of enrich each other by being inclusive. And I think that was our founding principle, really. And it was a way of building a research framework that was quite novel at the time. And we continued to work on that as we've gone forward over the last decade. CIHR often uses our template of network creation as they put out new RFAs for new networks, which is, I think, really helpful. And it really speaks to the fundamental benefit of truly collaborative work. And so I'm going to hand it over to Marie-Josée now. We very much miss her already, but she's a CDTRP member, and I think will tell us a bit about what that's going on next. Marie-Josée.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Yeah, and yeah, it's great to be with you, at least virtually. It is a shame I couldn't be with you in person. And it does feel strange not to see my face on the slide for the CDTRP leadership. So as pointed out by Laurie, I had the honor last September of being offered the position of chair of the CIHR Governing Council. This is really the board that oversees all major responsibilities that are being taken over by CIHR. And in reflecting, I always wonder, like, should I do that? Will I do a good job? And I guess that, all of us here and CDTRP would not be there without CIHR support. So I guess that answers the first question, like, should we serve? I guess we all need to serve and to make sure that what we have been doing at CDTRP, this great adventure, this great endeavor that is really built on values of openness and collaboration and innovation through openness and welcoming the other, whether the other is someone that's different from a disciplinary perspective, or from the fact that it is a patient partner that we so dearly value being embedded within CDTRP. All of that is actually pretty unique and exceptional. And I think that having had the capacity to develop such an innovative way of pursuing research in Canada made it almost an obligation, at least a responsibility, to share this experience and expertise with the rest of the organization, and making sure that this type of leadership open to other ways of knowing and learning and sharing, that all of that can be hopefully embedded in the way that we promote and pursue health research in Canada. So obviously there's 24 hours in a day, and it was impossible to accept this new position while maintaining all the other activities that I am pursuing. And there was obviously also at least optics of conflicts of interest, of someone who's leading the governing board of CIHR was also involved in an organization that's being funded by CIHR, that would not have played well from an optics perspective. So I had to step aside, but I did mention to Laurie, Patricia, Sunny, Jean-Sébastien, and to all of you guys that I will always be a CDTRP member, and I have like CDTRP tattooed on my heart, and it will obviously never go away. I would like to take some minutes to kind of share with you, though, like some thoughts around CDTRP, what it means, I guess, for Canada, for health research, and why it's important for all of you to be there, either online or in person, and to continue, developing this incredibly innovative way of producing knowledge and mobilizing knowledge. And I guess that it's not, when you're inside the organization, when you're inside CDTRP, you kind of take for granted that, what is being done is being done across the board, and that all other networks are doing the same way and thinking about supporting science and knowledge mobilization the same way as CDTRP is doing. I have to mention, and I've been, looking at, various types of networks in my role as VP Research at Université de Montréal, that there are, pretty unique elements at CDTRP that, need to be valued, but that need also to be shared with other networks, other organizations. And I think that one of my take-home message is that the CDTRP story needs to be told. That it's your story, all of you. It's also the story of the organization, but that should not be taken for granted. That the way CDTRP is supporting research is a given in other organization. And that's it's important not to only talk about the outputs of CDTRP, but to really reflect on how we are getting there, how CDTRP is welcoming new blood and is getting at new innovation and innovative pathways, and how CDTRP is continuously reinventing itself towards a greater, more positive impact for the Canadian population and for our patient partners. So I did mention, values of, openness and innovation and collaboration and respect. And I'll switch to French now because Laurie l'a mentionné, c'était quelque chose que de tout début, je me souviens quand Laurie s'en souviendra, quand on a accepté la subvention pour le CNTRP, le Programme national de recherche en transplantation du Canada, il n'y avait pas de donation à ce moment-là, mais quand on avait accepté, Laurie avait commencé ses commentaires de remerciement en français, puis moi, j'avais suivi en anglais, parce qu'on était déjà convaincus, puis on n'avait pas de patient partenaire à ce moment-là, mais on était déjà convaincus que de voir fleurir cette organisation-là dans une approche qui est accueillante à l'ensemble de la dualité, diversité linguistique, c'était une force. C'était une force si on l'exploitait et on l'explorait avec respect et ouverture. Puis ça nous a démontré aussi notre premier atelier de partenariat patient. On l'avait fait à Montréal. On l'avait fait donc avec des patients francophones. Et puis, c'est quelque chose qui est pas nécessairement toujours présent à l'esprit de l'ensemble des décideurs, mais on fait de la recherche en français, en anglais, on mobilise les connaissances en français et en anglais et on apporte et on accueille l'expérience vécue de nos patients dans les deux langues parce que de pouvoir le vivre puis l'exprimer dans les deux langues, puis j'ose espérer un jour dans une multiplicité de langues autochtones, mais ça nous permet d'accueillir différemment puis avec plus d'innovation puis de respect et d'ouverture la richesse de notre communauté. And that's all very unique. I'm sometimes looking at, other national programs. And I have to say that I did mention that at our, past GC meeting. And especially if we want to welcome and support the stories and the value of the lived experience that our, patients are offering, they have to be able to share this experience in their own language, their own first language. And when we mobilize knowledge to the entire Canadian population, this has to be done with the thought that reaching out in various languages will only enrich our capacity to have a positive impact. That was a given at CDTRP. It's not for all other health research organizations. This story needs to be told. The other story about patient partnership. And Laurie and I, we did, we were strong proponents of making sure that we don't isolate basic science, that we keep basic science and the discussion and the dialogue, and that we obviously have like basic science and translational scientists working with clinical scientists, health systems, and that patients needed to be active participant in this dialogue at each and every step. And if we take that into consideration, that we will all understand ourselves better. That is something that is deeply rooted, not only in the aims, the goals that CDTRP is pursuing now, but it's in governance and core values. That should not be taken for granted. This story needs to be told. Going from CNTRP to CDTRP, the donation story is such an incredible story that we should all be proud of, like welcoming and helping grow this this theme and making it sure that it is now embedded within the very title of what CDTRP is doing, this transition, but also like the superb research that was done and that is still being pursued in so many ways. This needs to be outlined. So I guess that's something that I'm incredibly proud of, and I'd like to again say thanks to Mamata and Michael, is to see like new young investigators like joining CDTRP and joining the organization with those core values of doing research differently, but making sure that in doing so with openness and with this innovative spirit, we will have a major and positive impact for the whole community in Canada. So that is so precious. And even if I'm not going to be as present as I used to be, I'm still a member of CDTRP, but I'm not the co-director anymore. I think that I urge you, all of you, to try to remember that this is a unique opportunity. We hope that in years to come, that there will be some other research organizations that will kind of follow the CDTRP model. But it's important not only to think about, what we are producing, but how we are getting there, because that's probably as important as the research output. So get it out. Tell the CDTRP story, tell your story, and tell yourselves and reflect about, how it's making it possible to do research and knowledge mobilization differently, that you've done it. We've all done it, and we will, hopefully continue to do it to the benefit of our patients, of the whole community, and to the Canadian population. So thank you so much. Again, I wish I could be there with you. I couldn't make it, but I will always be a CDTRP member. Puis merci à vous tous de continuer à tenir le flambeau. Laurie?
Merci, Marie-Josée, comme toujours, pour vos mots importants. So thank you again, everyone. I am struck just in reflection, listening to Marie-Josée, that we've also, another trend that has that we've been working on is welcoming more members of our Indigenous communities to the research effort. And I'd like to just pause as I was thinking about the language that, these are languages that are not as accessible to us as French and English, and we may not have our sessions in some of these languages, but the voices that and the willingness to engage with the research community and guide it into how we can best do that by Mary Bocage and Caroline Tate and other members, other Indigenous members of the CDTRP is really very helpful. And I really appreciate, I think we all appreciate the efforts that they've made and continue to make to open doorways for us, because these are members of our community. Their voices are very important as well. They face problems that we don't fully understand, and that we don't necessarily have easy pathways to address, but the inclusion is really very, very important. And so I'd like to, who am I handing over to next? Oh, it's Q&A. Okay, so, Marie-Josée, thank you so much. Merci comme toujours. And I wish you were here with us too. So do we have questions from the audience? Please. What embargo? Who said something? Are there questions in the chat box? Do we know? Not yet? Does anyone have questions in the audience? None? Good thing we left 15 minutes for questions. Well, anyway, welcome to Kelowna, those of you that are here with us. You know, the other thing is, I think, you know, this is the community here, and it's not, it's like your efforts are, so here's a little thing for like people giving talks. You know what, you have your last slide, you have your acknowledgements, and you say, I'd like to thank the funders and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I see talks that have CDTRP in the acknowledgement slide. This is not the, and while we appreciate that, this is not an acknowledgement of funding. This is a framework that you're all members of. And so we need your voices when we think toward the future of what, how will we be sustainable? Remember, we started as a grant, we continued as a grant. We need the voices of the community to be lobbying, you know, every the government agency, our wonderful foundations that support us, our industry partners. We need your voices as the community voices to help with that effort. So it's not an acknowledgement, it's an immersion in the efforts of keeping this community moving forward in the way that's proved so successful. So anytime that you have a chance in your daily lives, your research lives, to help us with those efforts, please use it. Don't just hide it at the end, but put it at the beginning that this is CDTRP supported research. Whether you were paid from something to do with CDTRP or whether you're part of the community, that kind of support is really, really the nugget at the middle of what we're doing. And we need your voices to help with that. So let's maybe start off the week because we're going to hear some wonderful, wonderful research. Melanie.
So nice to be here. Can you tell us how you're going to work with the heart failure network and what's the link with CDTRP?
The heart failure. So the question was, how are we working with the heart failure network that was newly launched and the links? We are still working on that. They've just held their first meeting last month at the Canadian Cardiovascular Society meeting, but we're very interested in working on educational programming with the Heart Failure Alliance. We can take lessons learned through the last 9 years of CDTRP and CNTRP before that to look at how we share webinars and speakers and programs. We may have some real joint kinds of initiatives that we can sponsor together, perhaps. The heart failure community, of course, it's just one piece of an organ-specific aspect that goes, some of whom go on to transplantation. But as a network, they're very interested in the way we set up the framework and how we grew over the years. So thanks, Melanie. That's it's still a work in progress. Manuel.
From, sorry, can you hear me? From Dan Harvey. So it says, congratulations, Marie-Josée. Fantastic for Canada and sharing the story. Perhaps you and Lori can give some overview of how Canadian research funding might shift through current financial challenges. It's looking increasingly problematic in the UK.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Dan is one of our collaborators in the donation field in the UK. So the question, I think, is how is funding shifting and so on. Well, I must say that we have been striving to find creative ways of funding research from the very beginning. And that changes all the time. It's a moving target, and we have to have we have had an iterative approach to saying, well, how do we, when we interact, for example, with industry partners, what does that look like? And can we take off our hats of what it used to be? Because that's really a changing target, is how do we do this? And we realize that the conversations that we have, for example, with a potential partner who supports us from one of our industry partners, is how does that look like that's mutually beneficial? It's not just a kind of a form online that you fill out, but what are they seeking? How can they interact with us? Kind of like we did with media. These are partners that we need to get into their world in a way, in the mental space, to have a conversation that meets their needs as well as our needs. And we don't often do that very well, but you need to spend the time to really get at what they need, as well as what we need, and how we can make that a constructive relationship. Research funding. So one of the other things that we'd like to focus on in the coming year, and Dan's question or comment is along those lines, is our international partnership. So we have many international collaborations, and Dan represents one with the UK. I'd like to welcome Rafael here from Madrid, Rafael Correa, who's one of our collaborators in Spain. He'll be speaking tomorrow, looking at opportunities that we can interact with on the international level. I think is going to be very important going forward as well. And there are some joint applications and so on, but we have to keep looking for them. They're not going to fall into our laps. We need to look places where maybe we haven't thought about before. Mamata.
Yeah. Could I comment?
Oh yes, please, Marie-Josée, sorry.
Yeah. So I fully agree with what you mentioned. I would add like maybe two, three other things. I guess so on the importance of team science, because this is what CDTRP is all about, I think we need to reflect on, what are the criteria that we use to evaluate scientific excellence, and whether those criteria take into consideration the efforts and the capacity to work as a team and not only as discrete individuals. And that is something, I guess, that all jurisdictions have to evaluate. Whether in transplantation and donation, but in general, moving from, individual programs that need to be, again, supported and fostered, but also how these programs in some ways can leverage one another and increase the velocity of knowledge production and also the impact of knowledge mobilization. The second thing is knowledge mobilization. I guess we all recognize that it's not sufficient to produce new knowledge, that even if it's exciting and it's new and it's innovative, it will not necessarily translate into changes in the way that we approach a problem, that we treat patients, that we care for individuals, and that there's a real science around knowledge mobilization that, we shouldn't forget about that, but we should actually, try to really branch out to the knowledge mobilization specialists and making sure that that's embedded into, how we think about science, not only about producing, but making sure that it reaches its maximum impact. And a little add-on to knowledge mobilization, we very often think about knowledge mobilization as something that's, siloed within our kind of own sector. So, like you find something on, I don't know, like allograft rejection, and you're hoping that it will have an impact in transplantation. But I think, need to consider the potential impact of what we're producing in a more cross-cutting way. And the fact that, we've been, working at CDTRP with 3 communities, like donation, Dan knows very well, the donation community, and the transplantation and the, stem cell transplantation communities kind of offered possibilities for knowledge mobilization that was kind of outside the usual silo that, you think of when you're mobilizing, but maybe thinking, so that might be, something that is not conducive to reduction and rejection. but could be important for folks who want to have like a graft versus leukemia effect. And maybe like kind of this immunogenic response that, we want to avoid in transplantation. Solid organ might be very helpful in transplantation stem cell. So making sure that we kind of branch out a bit more the knowledge mobilization venture path, so that it kind of reaches out a bit more broadly, that what might be anticipated from the group that is producing knowledge. So that is also asking for kind of broad view on how we make sure that, what we do has like the greatest impact. And if we're aiming for that, I think we need to also, try to find ways to measure that, follow that, and see what works and what doesn't.
Very good point. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Mamata.
Yeah, well, merci beaucoup, Marie-Josée, pour votre dévouement au CDTRP. So I just had a quick question for Lori regarding, say TTS and the collaborations of CDTRP with the TTS and how that could be leveraged for, say, Canada, EU, or say more global health collaborations, because there's lots of, say, emphasis on global health initiatives these days. So is there any way we could leverage those connections and, be involved in such more global initiatives in Canada, EU collaborations?
Yeah, that's a great point to make, that there are things we can do, and you start with a collaboration on a specific thing, and make kind of understand that society and what they do, and then I think that grows as we seek out opportunities, understanding that they are as welcoming as we would like to be for those interactions. And so I think those will continue, but that's something that we all can do together. So we can work with you, picking you out because you asked the question. We can work with you to foster some of those relationships and ideas. And it's the ideas that we can bring forward, and I think it helps empower ideas of the individual into the ideas of the bigger
Larger
group, which makes for really fruitful collaborations. Marie-Josée, did you want to add something there?
One just quick one, because there is, you may want to check, I don't know whether it's out or not, but the New Frontiers website, there is going, I think it was pre-launched. There will be an international call for adaptation and resilience towards in the area of climate change. It's something that is not looked at, and especially as we are hopefully going out of a pandemic. And Patricia pointed out, the impact that it is still lingering for immunosuppressed individuals. Is, how being immunosuppressed changes the capacity to adapt and be resilient to an environment where we will be probably facing more and more zoonotic diseases and a changing landscape. So thinking about how CDTRP, has collaborations and partnerships with, a number of international organizations, that might be it might be important to reflect as to what a global health hat, how immunosuppressed people are facing unprecedented challenges in a changing world, and how a global health perspective might be important in defining ways of increasing resilience for immunosuppressed individuals, and not siloing or isolating them further from society and the active world. So
Great.
so New Frontiers and Research Fund, the international section.
Great, thank you. Did you want to? We had one last question. Okay, thank you. All right. Would you like to? So that concludes. We move on to the next session. Thank you very much.